Greetings, viewers, and as promised, I have more Adorno content for you. I want to read a brief passage from Adorno, which is intensely relevant to contemporary experience in the 21st century. So much of what Adorno did was way ahead of his time, and this is one of those quotes. This is from a passage called Happiness and Waiting in Vain. This is in pages 366 to 368 of the German version of Negative Dialectics. And I have a version of Negative Dialectics in my own English language translation, which gets most of the terms correct and is more or less factually accurate. So you can read that version if you want. Short passage, and then I'll unpack it. So here's Adorno, quote, "What metaphysical experience would be, to those who eschew the reduction of this to presumably religious primal experiences, is closest to how Proust imagined it, in the happiness promised by the names of villages like Otterbach, Waterbach, Royenthal, Montbrun. You think that if you go there, you'd be in what is fulfilled, as if it really existed. If you really go there, that which is promised recedes like a rainbow. Nevertheless, you're not disappointed. Rather, you feel you're too close, and that's why you don't see it. This is presumably why the difference between landscapes and the districts, which determine the world of images of childhood, is not that great. What Proust experienced at Illiers was something many children of the same social strata shared at different places. But for this generality, for what is authentic in Proust's portrayal to form, one must be enraptured at that one spot without squinting at the generality. To the child, it's obvious that what delights it about its favorite little town is to be found there and only there and nowhere else. It errs, but its error constitutes the model of experience, that of a concept, which ultimately would be that of the thing itself, not the poverty of that which is shorn away from things." Beautiful, beautiful meditation. Now, Proust, of course, Marcel Proust, the great French writer, talking about memory, metaphysics, going back to the past, and it's all about memory and remembrance and finding yourself in the past and thinking about the past as this strange kind of space. But the fundamental category Adorno is talking about is actually absolutely critical to 21st century, and that is this experience of space, which turns into an experience of time. There is a model for this, one of the most powerfully utopian institutions human beings have created over the last 30-odd years, the transnational coffee shop. Very new creation in world history. Human beings didn't go to coffee shops and sip and surf and have the wireless and Wi-Fi and so forth. This is entirely new. It's entirely transnational. It's entirely wrapped up with a whole new way of thinking about space, place, etc. And here's the kicker. Restaurants have existed formally since the late 18th century, where we think they're more or less invented as a form in pre-revolutionary France and then spread elsewhere. So eateries where food is commodified, that's a long-standing feature. But a place of food consumption, which is not about space, that's what makes coffee shops interesting. The whole point of a coffee shop is not really the space you're occupying. No. It's that you purchase something and that's the entrance fee so that you can spend time. They're time establishments. They're not space establishments. Any good coffee shop is not going to hustle you out the door. If so, they're just an ordinary eatery and they're just selling food. No, a real coffee shop is actually selling you time. And that's automatically contradictory because what does that really mean? How does that work? Aren't there barriers to that? Yeah, there's a class struggle over that. I would argue that this is actually a class struggle worth fighting. In fact, that ordinary working people do have the right and should have the right to patronize these establishments. They would get the most out of that. This control over time shouldn't just be for the rich. No, this is actually a democratic human right. We should all be able to access our own time. And a time which is antithetical and in opposition to the dominant form of time under capitalism, which is everywhere on the entire planet these days, and that's labor time. So when you waste time at a coffee shop, are you really wasting time? What does that mean, to waste time? I would argue there's a whole bunch of complex contradictions there, and we shouldn't just throw that out and say, oh, you're not busy, you're not producing value for some giant plutocrat. maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we need to stop and ask, what is all this productivity for? If we have all this amazing productivity and 1 billion people don't have enough to eat and aren't going to school and their children not being fed, there's something wrong with our notion of productivity, isn't it? Yes, there is. And this is where a meditation on place and space matters. This control of time, because it's never about the space inside of the coffee shop. It's the potential of the time in there, the conversations we may have, the poem or short story we may write, the lines that we'll dash off to our friends, the social media sites that we may or may not visit, whatever interactions happen there, whatever collectivity happens, whatever information happens. Coffee shops have that utopian energy, and it's important to think about this during a time of revanchism when the right wing wants to shut down utopia and corral it into violence and the destruction of our species. Essentially, we have to create spaces not just of living, but of life itself, and coffee shops are part of that.